Snow was coming down sideways when I spotted her, alone on the shoulder, hood up, engine steaming like it was ready to give its last breath. I rolled my semi to a stop, thinking I was just helping a stranded traveler. But the moment she turned toward my headlights, I saw something in her eyes. Not fear of the cold, but fear of someone catching up. She told me she'd just buried her father, didn't shed a tear, and when she said his name, my stomach dropped. Her old man was the crime boss, whose shipments my company had been accidentally hauling for years, and now they think I know something. Just then, through the snow, another pair of headlights appears, creeping closer. Too slow to be friendly, too deliberate to ignore. And she grabs my sleeve and says, "If that's who I think it is, we run." Name's Hank Lawson. Been hauling up and down these interstates longer than most dispatchers have been alive. You learn a couple of things out here. How to read a sky, how to read a road, and how to read a scared face. That night, the sky was already telling me to park it. Snow was blowing sideways across I-84, dusk smearing itself into the mountains, and the radio was all static and storm warnings. I should have pushed on to the next truck stop, grabbed bad coffee, and listened to weather reports like every other tired driver. Instead, I saw her. Little sedan sitting crooked on the shoulder, hazard lights clicking weakly through the snow, hood up, steam curling like a dying breath. I eased my 40 tons over, brakes sighing as I came to a stop behind her, flipped on my hazards. The whole situation felt wrong before I even killed the engine. I pulled on my jacket, stepped down into the slush, and walked up with my boots crunching on icy gravel. The cold bit through my jeans, that sharp kind of cold that makes your eyes water. She turned toward me, and for a second I forgot about the temperature. She was standing there in a black coat that was way too thin for that weather, a simple dress under it, heels half buried in slush. Her hair was a mess from the wind, mascara smudged just enough that I could tell it wasn't from crying, but from rubbing her eyes. In her hand, she clutched one of those cheap funeral home pamphlets. "Evening," I said, raising my hands a little so I didn't spook her. "Name's Hank. Saw you out here and figured you could use another set of eyes." She tried to smile, but her lips trembled from the cold. "My car just died," she said. "And my phone. No signal, of course." She held up the dead screen, then shoved it back into a purse that probably cost more than my first truck. I leaned under her hood, pretending to study what I already knew. That piece of junk wasn't going anywhere tonight. I could smell burnt coolant and see cracked hoses. "You're not driving this thing out of here," I said finally, stepping back. "Not in this weather." She let out a breath like she'd been holding it since the last exit. "Perfect," she muttered. "Just perfect." The wind gusted harder, and the funeral pamphlet flipped open in her hand. I saw a name before she snapped it shut. Vincent Moretti. The name hit me like black ice. I'd seen that name before, never in print, never on the side of a building, but whispered in late-night conversations at truck stops, on crumpled notes about cash loads that didn't match the manifest. On a text once, from a buddy who vanished a month later. "Heard Denton's running for a Moretti guy. Be careful, Hank." "You just bury him?" I asked, nodding at her hand before I could stop myself. She looked down, then back up with an expression I recognize from folks who have seen too much too young. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Today, my father." I expected tears. None came. Just a tightening in her jaw, like she was holding back something else entirely. "You don't seem too broken up," I said, instantly wishing I'd kept my mouth shut. My filter gets thin when I'm tired. She shrugged one shoulder. "Grief is complicated." Behind us, my truck idled, casting long shadows over the snow. The highway was strangely empty, just the occasional blur of lights in the far lane. The air had that muffled, heavy feel right before a real bad storm. "Look," I said, "I can get you to a truck stop a few miles ahead. Warm food, phone, maybe a motel. We can figure the car out when the tow trucks feel like living dangerously." She hesitated, eyes flicking to the dark shapes of the trees beyond the guardrail. "I can't just call anyone," she said. "Not..." Not after today. That got my attention. Folks usually have at least one person they trust, even if it's just a cousin who drinks too much. I studied her more closely. Something coiled and ready sat just under her calm surface, like she was expecting the shadows to move. "What's your name?" I asked. "Sophia," she said. Then, after a beat, "Sophia Moretti." There it was. The floor dropped out from under me, even though I was standing on solid asphalt. Vincent Moretti wasn't just some guy. He was the head of a criminal outfit that half the Northeast trucking network had rumors about. Drugs, guns, money. If something dirty was moving, odds were his people had a hand in it. And my company, Denton Freight Lines, had been getting a lot of premium rush loads lately, all cash, no questions asked. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, voice a little rougher than before. Inside, my brain was doing donuts. What the hell was Moretti's daughter doing stranded on my stretch of highway? She stared past me down the road, into the swirling snow. "He wasn't the man the world thinks he was," she said. "He was worse." I was about to ask what she meant when the night changed. It started as a dim glow on the horizon behind my truck, a smear of yellow through the falling snow. Then it grew brighter, closer. Headlights. I heard the crunch of tires on old packed ice, the low rumble of an engine idling too slow to be a regular car just passing by. Sophia's fingers clamped around my sleeve. "That's not good," she whispered. "Could just be a state trooper doing a welfare check," I said, though it felt wrong as it left my mouth. "Troopers don't creep up like they're stalking prey." She shook her head, eyes locked on those approaching lights. "They've been following me since the church," she murmured. "I thought I lost them near the last exit." "Who's they exactly?" I asked. She swallowed. "The people who worked for my father, the ones who don't believe I walked away empty-handed." The headlights drifted closer, slow and deliberate, like the driver had all the time in the world. A cold sweat crawled between my shoulder blades, in spite of the freezing air. Sophia leaned in so close I could feel her breath. "If that's who I think it is," she said, barely more than a breath, "we don't have much time, and you might be in this already, whether you like it or not." The car rolled to a stop behind my semi, its lights still on high beam, pinning us in harsh white. The driver didn't get out, not yet. I've hauled everything from fresh produce to machine parts to a pallet full of novelty garden gnomes that creep me out for 3 states. But I had never hauled someone else's trouble until that night. "Okay," I said, slowly, squinting into the glare. "We're going to move this conversation somewhere that's not lit up like a shooting range. Grab whatever you need from the car, essentials only." Her eyes flicked from the headlights to my face. "You don't even know me," she said. "Lady, I don't need to know you to not let you freeze to death or get jumped on the side of I-84, I replied. "Move." She didn't argue after that. She popped her trunk while staying low, like someone who'd been told more than once to keep her head down. I helped her yank out a small suitcase and a worn-in leather bag that looked older than both of us put together. While she fussed with the suitcase latch, I stole a better look at the car. Something about it bugged me. It was clean, too clean for the kind of beater that dies in a snowstorm. Tires were good, body in decent shape. Even the headlights were new. Then I saw it, a small, circular smudge of cleaner low on the rear bumper, right where nobody normally bothers to wipe. I'd seen marks like that before, on fleet vehicles that ran tracking units. "Hang on," I muttered, crouching down like my knee wasn't screaming at me. I brushed snow aside and ran my fingers along the bumper, cold metal, road grime, then plastic with a seam. There it was, tucked up where the bumper met the frame, a black puck, no bigger than a stack of quarters, held with an industrial magnet. No brand, no markings, just a single tiny LED, dark for the moment, but capable of blinking your life away. "Damn," I breathed. "What?" Sophia asked, 1 foot already in the slush, suitcase handle clutched in her hand. I pried the tracker loose and held it up between 2 fingers. "Congratulations," I said. "You came with a homing beacon." Her face went pale in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "That's not one of mine," she said quickly. "I ditched my phone hours ago." "I believe you," I said. That's the problem. The car behind my rig still hadn't moved, just sat there, headlights burning. I couldn't see the driver through the glare, but whoever they weren't in any rush. "You think that's them?" Sophia asked, voice a thin thread in the wind. "Dunno," I said. "But somebody went to the trouble to put this on your ride, and somebody's sitting back there watching us freeze." I slipped the tracker into my jacket pocket without really thinking about it. Years of habit. You don't leave evidence lying around, and you sure as hell don't assume the people chasing it are smart. "Come on," I said. "Up into the truck, we're wasting time." We hustled back to my cab, the snow stinging like sandblasting. I boosted her up the steps, then climbed in after her and slammed the door shut on the outside world. The cab filled with that tight, dry heat only a working diesel can make. I flipped off my interior light and adjusted the mirrors so I could see the car behind us without giving them a clear view of us. Sophia rubbed her hands together, staring at the mess of CB mic cords, coffee cups, and logbooks that made up my little world. "Is it safe?" she asked. "Safer than where you were," I said. "Seat belt." She clicked it without argument. My phone buzzed on the dash. Caller ID, Denton Freight, dispatch. I stared at it for half a second too long. Dispatch doesn't call this late unless someone's truck is on fire, someone's late on a high-value load, or someone important is paying attention. I answered, putting it on speaker. "Lawson," I said. "Hank, hey, Carl here," came the smooth voice of my boss, Carl Denton. He rarely called drivers directly. "Everything good out there?" Carl's voice always sounded like it belonged on a radio commercial, all warm charm, and just enough bass to make you think he cared. It had sold me on joining his company 12 years ago. It had kept me through dry seasons and long miles. "It's a snowstorm," I said. "Nothing's good out here. Why?" "Funny thing," he said lightly. "Your truck's telematics pinged a deviation. You pulled off the highway about 10 minutes ago. We're on a tight schedule with that trailer." "Everything okay with the rig?" Telematics, of course. Our trucks weren't just hunks of metal anymore. They were rolling tattletales, constantly sending breadcrumbs back to the office. "Just a stranded motorist," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Stop to help. You know me." Sophia shot me a look. It said, "Ghost just walked through your phone." There was a chuckle on the line. "Always the good Samaritan," Carl said. "Listen, Hank, I appreciate that, but this particular load is time-sensitive. We have some clients watching this route. I'd feel better if you were wheels up and rolling in the next few minutes." His choice of words set off alarms in my head. Clients watching this route. I thought of the tracker in my pocket. I thought of Vincent Moretti's name whispered over truck stop coffee. I thought of Sophia's funeral pamphlet. "What's so special about this load?" I asked, buying a second. "Paper goods," he said. "Same as the manifest says." I glanced at my trailer readout on the dash. The manifest code stared back. PPR 104B, just numbers and letters, nothing that screamed cartel cash or guns. Still, my gut tightened. We'd been hauling a lot of paper goods to warehouses that never seemed to be the same twice. Behind us, the mystery car's headlights shifted as if the driver had adjusted in their seat. "I'll be rolling soon," I said, forcing a yawn. "Had to make sure this lady wasn't going to get eaten by wolves or whatever you got in your liability handbook." Carl laughed again, but this time it was thinner. "You know the rules, Hank. Company doesn't love unscheduled stops. I'm going to pretend I didn't see this one, but I need to see movement soon, okay?" "Copy that," I said. "Lawson out." I hung up before he could say anything else and let the cab go quiet. Sophia watched me like she wasn't sure if I was about to throw her back into the snow. "That was your boss?" she asked. "Yep," I said. "And he's never that chatty unless someone's watching him too." "You think he's connected to my father?" she asked, voice soft. I took the tracker out of my pocket and set it on the dash, turning it slowly between my fingers. "I don't know what I think yet," I said. "But this little guy says someone with money and reach cared where you went, and my truck's got its own snitch on board feeding your location straight to Carl." Sophia's gaze flicked to the back window, where the silhouette of my trailer loomed. "Maybe it's the same people," she said. Maybe that's how they always knew where my father's shipments were, where I was. I looked at her. Really looked at her. The expensive coat, the funeral program, the way she kept scanning for exits, like she'd been training for this escape for years. "Why'd you run?" I asked. She wrapped her arms around herself. "He died," she said. "And before he did, he told me something I wasn't supposed to hear. About a shipment, about a partner. He wasn't lucid. He said your company name, Hank. Denton." Her eyes met mine. "That's why I took this road. I thought maybe I could find whoever was helping him and make them pay, or at least make them stop." I blew out a breath. "Lady, you picked one hell of a hitchhiking strategy." She gave a tired half-smile. "Wasn't planning on my car dying," she said. The tracker in my hand suddenly flashed a tiny green blink. I swore under my breath. "Time's up," I said. "They know," Sophia whispered. "Either this thing just reconnected or someone turned it on remotely," I said. "Either way, you're not safe here. And I'm not so sure my job is what I thought it was." I jammed the tracker back into my pocket and flipped the truck into gear. Slowly, I started pulling away from the shoulder. The car behind us inched forward, then merged back onto the highway, never passing us, just hanging in my mirrors like a shark. "Where are we going?" Sophia asked, fingers tightening on the belt. "I'm going to act like a good little driver for a few miles," I said. "Then we're going to test a theory." "What theory?" "If your father's people and my boss are dancing to the same tune," I said, "and whether that tracker wants you or me." The snow swallowed the highway as we rolled, the mystery car a constant presence in my mirror. When the next exit loomed, a barely plowed off-ramp leading to a frontage road, I made my decision. I flipped my blinker like it was any other day and guided 40 tons of metal and secrets off the interstate, straight toward a place where the darkness felt closer. The car behind us hesitated for half a second, then followed. You can tell a lot about a tale by what they do at an off-ramp. Casual drivers don't follow semis into sketchy side roads after dark. Cops usually light you up if they want you. Professionals, they just keep coming. The turnoff dropped us onto a 2-lane frontage road that paralleled the interstate but ran through a patch of scrub trees and old industrial lots. My headlights painted the cracked asphalt in pale yellow. The snow here was deeper, hardly disturbed. In the mirror, the car stayed right with us. Not too close, not too far, like it had practiced. Sophia watched the side mirror on her door. "They're still there," she said. "Yep," I said, "so we're going to give them something to chew on." A mile ahead, a faded sign appeared out of the gloom. "Truck stop. Diesel. Diner. 1 mile." I knew the place. Mom-and-pop operation, good coffee, mechanic in the back named Ray, who'd patched more of my breakdowns than I cared to admit. Then another set of headlights appeared before the truck stop, parked at the entrance. As we drew closer, I made out the shape. A familiar company tractor, Denton freight colors. My colors. "Well, ain't that something?" I muttered. "What?" Sophia asked. "That rig up ahead," I said, "belongs to my company, and I'd bet my last paycheck I know who's behind that wheel." We rolled into the lot slower than I wanted to. The snowplow hadn't hit it yet, leaving ruts and slick patches. I eased my truck into a parking lane, watching as the Denton rig idled off to one side, near the mechanic bay. Beside the diesel pumps, leaning against a metal drum like he owned the asphalt, stood a man in a heavy coat and a company beanie. Even through the snow, I recognized the broad shoulders and the way he stood, like everything was a negotiation he was already winning. Rick Halper, company safety manager, Carl's right hand. The guy who signed off on our random inspections and handled special arrangements. "What's he doing here?" Sophia asked. "Either checking on snow chains," I said, "or checking on me." I maneuvered into a slot where I could see both the tail car and Rick's rig. The car pulled in too, parking 3 spaces over, facing us. Still, nobody got out. "Listen carefully," I told Sophia, killing the engine but leaving accessories on. "We got maybe 1 minute before somebody decides to play nice. Or not." Her hands were clenched so tight, her knuckles were bone white. "Okay," she whispered. I took the tracker from my pocket and set it on the console between us. "This thing is our problem and our leverage," I said. "If it's broadcasting, someone has a map with a dot on it. We're gonna make that dot lie." "How?" "You said you ditched your phone," I said. "I'm guessing whoever put this on your car relied on it to know where you were. The fact they showed up on the highway means it works. So we're gonna make it work somewhere we aren't." I opened the small cubby under my dash and pulled out a cracked old burner phone, the kind you buy with cash at a gas station and forget about. The screen was spiderwebbed, the battery dodgy, but it still powered up. "Truckers and burner phones," Sophia said, a tiny smile flickering. "Stereotype much?" "It's for podcasts and weather when my main phone dies," I said, "and occasionally when I don't feel like being tracked by my own company." "Don't judge." I flipped on the truck's interior Wi-Fi, connected the burner, and opened an app I used for checking my route telemetry. It showed a simple map with my truck as a little arrow, courtesy of the telematics unit. "We're a big arrow," I said. "You're a little dot." I nodded at the tracker. "If I can see what network this thing's talking to, I might be able to tell if it's the same folks who watch me." I dug into the settings with clumsy, cold fingers. The tracker's Bluetooth ping popped up on the screen, and with a couple of taps, I coaxed out a string of letters and numbers that might as well have been alien language to most folks. To me, it looked uncomfortably familiar. "Son of a—" I stopped myself. "What?" Sophia pressed. I turned the screen so she could see. At the top of the connection info, there it was. DFL Logistics Secure. "DFL," I said, "Denton Freight Lines." This little guy was piggybacking on the same secure network my truck uses. "Whoever's tracking you has access to my company's infrastructure." Sophia's throat worked. "So my father's people and your boss. At the very least," I said slowly, "they've been sharing toys." Outside, movement caught my eye. Rick straightened up from his lazy lean and started walking toward my truck, shoulders hunched against the snow. At the same time, the tail car's door cracked open and a man in a dark coat stepped out, staying in the shadows near the far pumps. "Okay," I said. "Showtime." "What do we do?" Sophia asked. "We split the difference," I said. "You slide back into the sleeper. Stay low, stay quiet. If anyone asks, I'm alone. You don't exist." "And the tracker?" she asked. "We put it somewhere someone else will be," I said. "If they think you're with another truck, they'll chase that ghost while we head the other way." Sophia hesitated only a second, then unbuckled and crawled into the dark of the sleeper, pulling the privacy curtain almost shut. Her perfume mixed with the diesel and old coffee smell, something human and fragile in the steel box. I pocketed the tracker again and swung open my door, the wind slapping my face awake. I climbed down just as Rick reached the side of my truck. "Hank!" he called, his breath puffing white. "Hell of a night for sightseeing." "Rick," I said, forcing a grin. "You lost or just bored?" He laughed, but his eyes were sharp. "Carl said you paused on the highway. Snow got you spooked." "Stopped to help a lady whose car died," I said. "Didn't realize dispatch was glued to my every pee break." Rick shrugged. "You know how it is. Tight schedules, important clients. Carl just wants to make sure our best driver isn't sitting in a ditch somewhere." I glanced past him. The man from the tail car was pretending to check his phone by the convenience store door, but his gaze kept drifting our way. "Your friend?" I asked, nodding toward him. Rick didn't even look. "Just another customer," he said. "Sure. Listen," Rick continued, lowering his voice. "Carl's jumpy about this load. Says the consignee's nervous. They're the type who notice if a truck spends too long off route." "Consignee's nervous about what?" I asked. "Paper goods, Hank," he said with a smirk. "We live in a fragile world. Don't worry about it. Just roll on and we'll all get paid." I shifted my weight, making like I was just another tired driver wanting to get back on the road. "You know there's a state trooper parked a few miles up," I lied smoothly. "They'll be real interested to know Denton's sending out chaperones in this weather." For the first time, something flickered in Rick's eyes. "Nobody's chaperoning you," he said. "We just happen to be using the same highway tonight." Funny coincidence, I said. And the tail? He finally glanced at the other man. You see a tail, Hank. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Long hours will make you paranoid. My fingers itched around the tracker in my pocket. Part of me wanted to shove it in his hand and see if his mask slipped. Another part knew that would put Sophia's life expectancy somewhere around a snowflake's. Look, Rick said, clapping me on the shoulder with a little more force than friendly. Just get back en route. There's a bonus in it if you hit the dock on time. Carl takes care of his people. Yeah, I said. Always has. I watched him walk back to his truck, then watched as he waved briefly, almost imperceptibly, toward the man by the convenience store. The man nodded once, then slipped back into his car. Pieces clicked into place in my head. If Carl and Rick were in bed with Moretti's outfit, that mystery car wasn't just some random thug. It was company. I climbed back into my cab, heart thudding. Sophia peeked through the curtain. Well, she whispered. They're in it, I said shortly. My boss, his right-hand man, probably half the upper office. And the car, she asked. Working with them, I said. Which means Denton Freight isn't just hauling for your father. They've got their own side deals going now that he's dead. She closed her eyes for a second. Then we're running from both of them, she said quietly, and we can't trust anyone on a radio. Not entirely true, I said. We can trust Ray. Who's Ray? She asked. Mechanic here, I said. Been patching my rig together since before Carl could spell logistics. Ray doesn't scare easy, and he hates suits almost as much as I do. I picked up the tracker again, feeling its small weight like a decision. Here's the plan, I said. We give this thing to Ray. Have him stick it under Rick's bumper when nobody's looking. We let the wolves chase their own shepherd for a while. And us? Sophia asked. I started the engine, the cab rumbling alive around us. We take a different road, I said, and we start collecting proof. Outside, I watched the snow swirl under the floodlights, the kind of whiteout that swallows tire tracks in minutes. Somewhere beyond the glow, people who thought they owned the road were watching their screens, waiting for a little blinking dot to make up their minds for them. They had no idea the dot was about to move, and they sure as hell didn't know that the truck they thought was theirs had just picked a side. Ray didn't even blink when I walked into his bay with Sophia, hovering close behind me, like a shadow with good hair and bad luck. He wiped his hands on a rag, raised an eyebrow and said, You look like you just ran over something important, or are about to. Little of column A, little of column B, I said, patting my jacket pocket where the tracker was buzzing like a heart that didn't belong to me. Ray wasn't the gossiping type, but he knew when to shut up. He led us toward the back of the shop, away from the windows where Rick's men might glance in. Sophia stuck close, hugging her coat around herself. The snow had soaked the hem of her dress, leaving tiny ice crystals on her stockings. She looked like someone who never expected to be in a mechanic's bay at midnight, let alone running from criminals tied to her dead father. Ray jerked his chin toward her. Friend of yours? Someone who needs help, I said. Someone Denton Freight doesn't need to know about. Ray snorted. Then you shouldn't be here. Carl's golden boy was sniffing around earlier, asking about my overnight logs. Said he was checking our chains inventory. In a snowstorm, right. I handed him the tracker. He studied it like a jeweler inspecting a stolen diamond. Whoever put this on ain't playing around. Military-grade magnet. Frequency hopping signal. You piss off the CIA, Hank. Not this week, I said. Can you plant it? Ray gave a slow grin. On whose ride? Rick's, I said. Then send him and that tail car on a little merry chase. He nodded. Give me 5 minutes. While Ray worked his magic, Sophia and I waited in the corner of the bay, tucked behind a stack of tires. She sat on an overturned crate, arms wrapped around her knees. Her breaths were uneven, long exhales that fogged the cold air. You holding up? I asked quietly. She gave a humorless laugh. I buried my father 6 hours ago, she whispered. Now I'm hiding in a garage with a truck driver, running from men I grew up calling uncles. I don't even know what holding up means anymore. And I crouched beside her. Sophia, I said gentle. Whatever trouble your father built, it ain't yours to carry. Not tonight, not ever." Her eyes glistened, not with tears but something steadier. "Then why are you helping me, Hank?" I shrugged. "Maybe I got tired of hauling other people's secrets. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Or maybe—" I hesitated. "Maybe you looked like someone worth helping." Her breath caught. For a second, the storm outside felt far away. Before either of us could say anything else, Ray reappeared. "It's done," he said. "Tracker's tucked real pretty under Rick's bumper, and he's leaving. Looks like they think he's you." I checked the bay window. Rick's truck rolled out of the lot, tail car sliding in right behind him like obedient dogs. "They're both following," Ray said. "Congratulations, you just bought yourself maybe 20 minutes. Sophia stood. 20 minutes for what? I pointed toward my truck. "For phase 2. "Phase 2? She asked. "We're going to break into my own company," I said. She blinked. "Hank, no," I said. "Not the office. The truth. There's a warehouse east of here where Carl stashes the paper goods that sure as hell ain't paper. We get proof. Hard proof. Then we take it to someone who can't be bought." "Who?" "State police," I said. "But not before we know exactly what they're hiding. Otherwise Carl spins us into prison cells before sunrise." Sophia stared at me a long moment. "You're risking everything." "Lady," I said, "I started risking everything the moment I pulled over to help you." Ray tossed me my keys. "Get moving, and Hank, watch your back. Folks who run with Moretti don't mess around." I nodded. We hustled out, climbed into the cab, slammed the doors shut. The cab warmed around us, 2 fugitives in a fortress of diesel and steel. I threw it into gear. "Ready?" I asked. "No," she said honestly. "Good," I said. "Means you're sane." We rolled out of the lot, tires crunching fresh snow. As the lights of the truck stop faded behind us, Sophia whispered, "Whatever we find, you're not going to like it." "Honey," I said softly, "I'm already halfway there." And as we turned onto the frontage road, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in 10 years. A number belonging to someone who should have been dead. The number flashing on my phone wasn't one you ignore. Not unless you want nightmares catching up on old debts. Sophia glanced over. "Who is it?" "Name's Teddy Bishop," I said. "Used to run logistics for let's call it a grey market distributor. I hauled for him once before I got smart." "You knew one of my father's partners," she whispered. "I knew one of his enemies," I corrected. The phone buzzed again. "Answer," Sophia said quietly. "Maybe he knows something." I did. "Hank Lawson," I said. A raspy chuckle crackled through the speaker. "Still dragging freight through blizzards, huh?" "Teddy," I said, "thought you dropped off the map." "Funny thing," he said. "Every time someone in your company sneezes, my people hear about it, and someone's been sneezing a lot today." I stiffened. "Meaning?" "Meaning Denton Freight ain't just playing with your old bosses," he said. "They're planning something sweeter now that Moretti's gone, and they think you're part of it." Sophia's eyes widened. "What's the play, Teddy?" I asked. "Carl's pulling a load through the East Warehouse tonight," he said. "Something your lady friend's father didn't want anyone touching till after his funeral. A delivery your boss shouldn't have." "What kind of delivery?" "Heard it was a thumb drive," Teddy said. "Evidence, names, numbers, enough to bury a few folks, maybe enough to start a war." Sophia sucked in a breath. "My father kept ledgers," she whispered. "Insurance, in case someone tried to take him out." Well," Teddy said through the speaker, "looks like someone did." That landed like a punch. "Teddy," I said quietly, "who killed Moretti?" There was a long, icy pause. Finally, "That's above your pay grade, Lawson, but you're shoulder deep now." "Give me something real," I said. "I'll give you this," he said. "If Carl Denton gets that drive into the wrong hands, your girl's dead before sunrise. And you'll look like you delivered the whole thing for him." The line went dead. Sophia stared at me, pale and furious. "Carl stole it from my father," she whispered. "He stole the ledger. He wants to use it. And he'll kill anyone who can read it," I said, "which includes you." I slammed the wheel with my palm. "That's it. We're ending this tonight." "Where?" she asked. The Denton Yard, I said, and Carl called a routine inspection at dawn. But that's not what he's planning. He wants plausible deniability. He wants you gone. And you? She asked softly. He wants me to take the fall. I downshifted onto the access road that led toward the yard's back entrance. The snow fell thicker now, cloaking the world in white silence. Sophia gripped the dash. Hank, you're not doing this alone. I met her eyes. Storm-grey eyes that had seen too much, lost too much, but weren't broken. Wasn't planning to, I said. The yard fence loomed ahead, tall chain link topped with razor wire. Floodlights cut through the snow, illuminating silhouettes of men moving on catwalks. Moretti's people, Sophia asked. No, I said. Carl's. Armed. Oh yeah, she swallowed. How do we get inside? Easy, I said. We don't hide. I pulled the semi directly into the open lane leading toward the inspection bay, headlights blazing. Are you insane? She hissed. Yes, I said. And Carl's about to see exactly how much. The guard stepped forward, raising a hand. Then he recognized my truck, tapped his mic, and waved us through. Sophia exhaled shakily. Okay, that shouldn't have worked. Oh, it didn't, I said. They're expecting us. They think we're walking into a trap. She froze. We are. I looked at her. Not blind. We rolled into the yard. An open expanse of snow-covered asphalt with crates stacked like silent witnesses. A line of men waited near the warehouse door. Not inspectors, not drivers, security, big, armed, unfriendly. At the front stood Carl Denton, parka zipped, hands gloved, smile wide. Sophia, he murmured as we climbed down. Nice to finally meet you. Her grip on my arm tightened. Carl's eyes were warm. His voice was not. But I'm afraid neither of you will be leaving. Carl's smile was the kind men use when they're already sure they've won. Snow fell around us like confetti at the world's coldest funeral. Sophia stepped closer to me, chin high, despite the tremor in her breath. Well, I said, this feels less like an inspection and more like an ambush. Carl shrugged. Ambush is such a negative word. I prefer cleanup. His men circled, not rushing, just tightening formation like a noose. The warehouse door behind him buzzed open, revealing bright lights and, my breath caught, state police uniforms, not aiming guns, talking, calm, relaxed, as if they were part of it. Sophia inhaled sharply. He bought them. Carl's grin widened. Partnerships are the backbone of logistics. I've simply diversified. So you stole Moretti's ledger, Sophia said, voice trembling with rage. I liberated an asset, Carl corrected. Your father was losing his touch. His people were planning a restructuring. He stepped closer. But lucky me, you came running right into my arms, which means I don't even need to hunt for the inheritance. Sophia stiffened. What inheritance? Carl smirked. Your father's insurance file. The one naming co-conspirators, judges, officers. He nodded at the warehouse. It's in there. And you're going to sell it, I said. Carl tilted his head. Sell? Hank? No, I'm going to control it. Denton Freight will be untouchable. Except, I said, for one tiny little problem. Carl blinked. And what's that? I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. The camera light blinked red. Carl's eyes narrowed. You're live streaming? No, I said. But the tracker we planted on Rick's truck is, I pointed, to those officers behind you, the real ones. Carl turned. The officers he'd bought weren't alone anymore. Behind them, stepping out from between pallets, were 8 state troopers in full gear, rifles raised, badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Carl's face drained of color. One of them held up the blinking tracker. Funny thing, the trooper said. This little gadget led us straight to your off-the-books warehouse. And your paper goods. Carl's men reacted fast, reaching for weapons, but the troopers reacted faster. 2 shots cracked into the air. Orders screamed, guns dropped. Security hit the ground. Carl backed away, hands up, eyes darting. You set me up, he whispered at me. No, I said. You set yourself up the moment you tried to bury Sophia. Sophia stepped forward, voice steady. My father didn't trust you. That's why he hid the ledger from you. That's why I found it before you did. Carl stiffened. What? I reached behind the seat of my truck and pulled out a small sealed USB drive. Carl's eyes bulged. No, he didn't. There's no way. Sophia looked him dead in the eyes. He left it with my mother. She gave it to me before the funeral. Carl lunged. The troopers tackled him in the snow. In the chaos, arrests, shouting, Carl howling that he'd been framed, Sophia stepped closer to me. She looked exhausted, relieved, shaken, dangerous, beautiful. You okay? I asked. She nodded weakly. I think I can finally breathe. I put a gentle hand on her cheek. You're free now. She leaned into me. Not yet, she whispered, but maybe with you. I felt something settle in my chest, something warm that had no business surviving a night like this. Yeah, I said softly, with me. The troopers escorted Carl into a cruiser. The warehouse lights flickered. Dawn crept over the snowy yard. And just like that, the road ahead of us was finally clear.